You are addicted to your own habits. That's why you create the habits that you have. See, I'm reading this book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, and currently halfway through the book. It's been a really good book. I put a lot of notes inside of this thing, like a whole bunch of notes. Y'all can see it goes like all the way back. Like I've put a shit ton of notes inside of this book. And this chapter has really just been speaking to me on it, and it's the three brains of thinking, doing, and being. And in this, he kind of really breaks down what habits are and how you kind of make or break your own habits, right? And how you have skill sets that are put into the habits that you have. So let me explain this. So there's three brains, right? There's the emotional brain, there's the cortexual brain, which is pretty much doing all the processing, right? And then if I remember correctly, he also talked about the cerebellum, right? So the first brain is pretty much the thinking brain. The second brain is the emotional brain, and then the third brain is the seat of the subconscious mind, or your cerebellum. So how does this all kind of connect together? So when you go through an experience, right? When you're learning something, your prefrontal cortex, your frontal lobe is going to activate. It's going to start processing that information and storing it for later, whether it's unconscious or subconscious. You guys probably all know that one person who knows stupid ass facts. That the reason why they know those facts is because they've been really, really good, and their prefrontal cortex is really, really good at remembering just random bits of information and being able to pull that just randomly out of the blue, right? So when you experience something, your prefrontal cortex is going to take in knowledge first of it, right? So when you take in that knowledge, the first thing that's going to happen is your prefrontal cortex is going to fire. And then you're going to start, then it's going to go from the prefrontal cortex into your second brain, which is your emotional brain. Once it goes into the emotional brain, you start releasing chemicals to feel a certain way about what you're going through. Then, once that is done, you then go through the third stage, is the subconscious mind, where it takes that feeling and that knowledge or the action of whatever it was doing, pairs it together, and forms what's called a habit. Now, here's the thing. To gain mastery over a habit, you need to be able to unconsciously do it, whether conscious or not. So, what this means is, like, let's use the example of driving. Everybody knows this. There's been certain moments where you forget that you're driving because your body's just on autopilot. And the reason you're able to safely navigate the road even on autopilot is because you've been doing it for so long, right? Some people could be damn near falling asleep behind the wheel and still be able to get to somewhere that's 3 hours away on 2 hours of sleep because their body is just that good and so subconsciously wired to be able to drive safe. They'll be able to permanently do it. So, if you think about it, your habits are literally nothing but just action and feeling put into something, and then you like the way that it is, right? Obviously, like, a lot of times this is not something that's really crazy to think about, but it's kind of crazy to think about how you can do certain habits for certain reasons. And in this book, again, another thing it talks about is how chemically you're addicted to things as a human being, right? Your brain releases chemicals the same way that it would do when it takes in drugs, right? Like your body can release the natural endorphins of doing something that cocaine would release inside of you. So if you think about it, your body is just naturally addicted to feeling chemicals. So you can actually become addicted to a chemical state inside of yourself, and things that kind of try to dictate you away from that, you're not gonna like. Like if you know the one person who's extremely fat in their life, 9 times out of 10 they're still extremely fat because they're so chemically like in homeostasis and being fat that trying anything else would just feel out of the norm. And then you know that one person who's always just like working super hard, it's like they're a robot, right? And if you try to take them away from working super hard, it's like their brain just shuts down. It's like they have no idea what to do. They're just so chemically in homeostasis and doing that one state and doing that one thing because that one thing releases certain chemicals inside of them that once you try and take away that chemicals, once you try and take away that feeling of addiction, that feeling of that high that they're always riding, they don't know what to do with themselves, right? So if you think about that, you can actually program yourself to become addicted to new chemicals that are made inside of your brain by your own actions. Like you can go into certain situations with people and ask yourself, how do I want this certain interaction with this person to go because I want to gain something from it? Or you can think it in the sense of I need to gain something inside of myself to be able to interact with this person, or maybe it's interacting with something else, yada yada yada, right? It doesn't really matter. The thing about it is that you really have the ability to choose what you want your habits to be. And that's the craziest part about it, is that your habits is just you liking a certain chemical state of being. And if you know that you like that, you're going to keep repeating that same thing over and over and over again. Like people who get addicted to drugs. Why do they get addicted to drugs? Because they like the way that it made them feel, and then they kept trying to chase a more and more higher high, right? You can do the same thing but with positive habits instead of bad habits. So you can go to the gym, right? And you can become addicted to going to the gym. And then you could do like the high that you get from being pumped. You might be like, okay, I wonder what it's going to look like when my pump is in my natural state. What will I look like when my pump is, which is now my natural state? What will I look like when I'm pumped at that point? And you keep stacking it. You keep going higher and higher and higher and higher. And eventually this becomes something that it literally is just a part of you. You just keep doing it over and over and over and over again. And it becomes part of your chemical homeostasis. You will have such a large amount of things that kind of build up into you becoming a chemically homeostasis or a chemically addicted person. And in a certain state of being, it's just going to be a whole bunch of things. But for you to come and do certain things, for you to break habits, you have to be able to step back out of that like addicted phase, to be able to step out of that high for a quick second and look at what your chemical homeostasis is. Look at what are the things that are making you feel addicted to certain things. Maybe it's porn, you have to learn how to break that. Maybe it's bad eating, you have to learn how to break that. Maybe it's not working, you have to learn how to break that. Maybe it's being lazy, you have to learn how to break that. You have to learn how to de-shed. You have to learn how to prune and prick and get rid of these old roots inside of your body. But the thing about it is that you're so chemically addicted to these emotions, it's going to be extremely hard for you to do so. But what you need to be able to do is you need to go into every single certain situation that you're going into and literally just ask yourself, what do I want to gain from this? And be conscious of what you're doing. Because you're in chemical homeostasis during certain things, you're going to be on autopilot, right? Like some people can go into work, they greet the same coworkers every single day. You see the same secretary, hey Joanne, and you keep walking away, right? You see it every single morning, right? Why don't you just like wake up one day and ask Joanne how she's doing? Maybe ask Joanne if she wants a coffee. Maybe ask Joanne if she wants tea. Maybe ask Joanne, if there's anything going on in her life. Try to build a better connection with Joanne. You can do this, and by doing that, you break your chemical homeostasis. You break the addicted phase that you've been in, that you're so used to. By breaking that, you then free your mind for a quick second, and now you're very conscious of what you're doing. You're conscious of what your body is doing, your flesh. Your mind is now more conscious of what your flesh is doing, and you want your flesh to act in cohesion with your mind. Once you are able to break in and get into that cycle of consciousness over and over and over and over again, then you're going to be able to start looking at habits that you have and break them down. And I think one thing that everybody should get addicted to is having the habit of being an observer. When you get addicted to being an observer, not an observer of other people, but of yourself, I feel like it's going to be one of the greatest habits you're ever going to have, because of the fact that you're going to constantly be looking at yourself in ways that you can improve or ways that you can get better. So you're constantly going to be looking at ways of like, how can I get better and what can I do better? So because of that, you're not going to allow certain things to come into your life to knock you out of your path. You're going to master being an observer of yourself and being conscious of who you are and being conscious of what you're doing. By being in that conscious state, you are then unconsciously being conscious. You can unconsciously be conscious. You make that consciousness, that skill of being conscious of what you're doing, into an unconscious skill. Just like how you were able to drive, right? You can then make that skill of being conscious into an unconscious skill. And then you're able to then go into multiple different situations and always have an open mind. The people who always grow are always the people who have a conscious and an open mind. But guess what? The way that they got that is by always making sure that they're conscious, and that becomes a unconscious skill. You can have consciousness become an unconscious skill. That's crazy to think about. You really have the power to control everything that you want inside of your life. Your habits are just a whole bunch of chemicals being fired in your brain, and your brain gets addicted to that feeling of having those chemicals. So if you can step out of that sense of addiction for a quick second and become conscious of what you're doing, you can change your chemical homeostasis. You can change the chemicals that are firing inside of your body, and you can actually choose which ones that you are able to, and which ones you want to fire inside of your body. That is crazy. You literally have the skill to either make yourself have a good habit or have a bad habit. But the thing about it is that you need to also, no, that's it. You constantly control what habits come in and out of your life. It's not something that just happens, right? Even in this, I wrote down, right? In this, he talks about two brains have taken you from thinking to doing, but can you create a state of being? And in this, he says, hold on, though. You are not ready for sainthood. It's not enough to have mind and body working together one time. That got you from thinking to doing. But can you reproduce that feeling of compassion at will? Can you repeatedly embody compassion independent of conditions in your environment so that no person or situation could ever create that old state of being in you again? Now, the reason he's talking about compassion is because in the book, he used an example of hating your mother-in-law and then being very conscious of why you hate her and then rewiring your brain to start being more open and being more accepting and loving to that person. So eventually, once you got into that physical realm, your brain was already preconditioned to act in a certain way that's more positive. So because of that, when he's talking about this, I wrote in my notes, when it's at will, whether conscious or not, it becomes a habit, right? Once that becomes a habit, once your body likes the feeling that, once your body likes the feeling that a certain action brings to you, you're going to repeat it over and over again. And then it becomes unconscious. Then once you're able to master this habit, you are a master when you've conditioned yourself with chosen thoughts and feelings. You've memorized desired emotional/chemical states, and nothing in your external life deters you from your aims. No person, no thing, and no experience at any time or place should disrupt your internal chemical coherence. You can act, think, and feel differently whenever you choose. That is the habit of being an observer. That is the habit of being conscious. That is the habit of being conscious. And what I wrote in my notes, I said, I currently have mastery of turning habits on and off. At this point in my life, I want to master the skill of turning a habit on and just letting it run for a long time. So because of that, now every single time I wake up, I'm not going to start practicing the skill of being conscious of what I'm doing and trying to become better, and trying to become better in the sense of letting that habit run for a longer amount of time. And by doing that, I build up not only the skill and the habit of being conscious, but I also build up the skill and the habit of very long and very hard work ethic. By doing that, you are able to then build your own habits, and you're able to habit stack, and you're able to increase the skills that you have inside of your life. Everything inside of your life you can create. You can create who you are. You can create the environment around you, the experiences you have with people. Everything that you want, you can create. It just comes down to who you are as a human being. And to become a person who is at that top echelon, you have to be obsessed, in my opinion, with being changed. You have to be addicted to the feeling of change and knowing what change can bring you. And once you become addicted to that, and you pair that with multiple other different addictions that are good for you, you'll become unstoppable. If you pair the addiction of change with the addiction of progress, and then the addiction of progress with the addiction of learning, that's three addictions that then help boost you past 99% of most people. And because of that, just because you've reached that chemical homeostasis, just because you become addicted to that feeling, it becomes a habit. You became addicted to that feeling. Your body liked the feeling it got from those peptides and those chemicals being released inside of you, and then decided, hey, I want to do this over and over again. That sent a signal up to your brain, which your brain said, okay, we're going to keep doing this over and over again, because remember, your brain is going to be the main seat. So if your brain likes what's going on, your body's going to like what's going on. Your body's going to communicate that back to your brain. Your brain's going to go, okay, we like what's going on. We're going to continue doing this over and over and over and over again because we like the way it makes us feel. If you're addicted to masturbation, it's because your mind and your body are telling you certain things, and they keep saying that. Be conscious of what you're doing during that moment, and you'll be able to break that homeostasis. If you're addicted to smoking weed, it's because your mind and your body keep communicating in a certain way, and you become addicted to that chemical homeostasis. Break that, you'll be able to break the habit of smoking weed. If you're addicted to working out, your mind and your body is communicating in a certain way. If you want to change your styles of working out, you're going to have to become conscious of the way you work out, break that chemical homeostasis, and do something differently. You constantly have the ability to change what you're addicted to. You constantly have the ability to change what your habits are. You constantly have the ability to change what your chemical homeostasis is. When your chemical homeostasis is in line with your habits, that means the chemicals inside of you is in line with your actions. Once that happens over and over and over again, that habit becomes a skill that becomes conscious and unconscious. That is when you have mastery over something. That is when your habits have become who you are. So if you want to start changing yourself in better ways and becoming a better human being, I promise you, all you're going to have to do, from what this book has been telling me and what I've personally practiced, is that you're going to have to be very conscious of what you're doing. You're going to have to tell yourself there's a certain goal that you want to do. You're going to have to then be conscious of whatever you're doing when you're chasing that certain goal. So if your goal is to start eating more healthy, every time you go and you want to go buy like fast food or a sweet treat for yourself, you have to then become conscious of why you want to do that. By becoming conscious of that, you then tell yourself, okay, we're going to go in the opposite direction. I'm going to go find something I like that's healthy for me. And by repeating that over and over again, you then become chemically addicted to the way that made you feel. You become chemically addicted to that feeling of homeostasis. That feeling of homeostasis doing that action brought you. By becoming addicted to that chemical, you then want to repeat that action over and over and over again. That action then becomes a habit because it's something you do perpetually over and over and over again. And once you become very good at it, this becomes an unconscious thing. So now not only is the mind working, the body is working. Now both of these things are working in conjunction with each other. That is when you truly have total dominion over who you are. You can actually change who you are, and you become like silly putty. You can literally just become exactly who you want. So yeah, chemical homeostasis, people. Conquer this. You can conquer a lot. Be a conqueror.